Welcome into BamaCentral 3 and out, everyone. For Joe Blackwell, Tony Tsoukalas, I'm Katie Windham. Guys, yesterday we talked about some of the Alabama teams this past athletic year that may have been a little bit disappointing, that may have underperformed relative to expectations. But today we'll look on a more positive side. And guys, what do y'all think are some of the teams that maybe overperformed for whether it was the roster they had or the expectations they had, or just kind of how the season went? Tony, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I think, just by nature and in the Nick Saban era, we expect Alabama to make the title every year. But honestly, this past season, I think that you could say that Alabama overperformed. I mean, they had 6 first-round picks the year before. They lost, probably the best offense in college football history. And they were able to not only kind of replace that, they had another back-to-back Heisman. Obviously, Bryce Young stepped in and filled in, the role that Mac Jones left behind, which was extraordinary. Both quarterbacks had an extraordinary season. So the fact that, Bryce Young was able to kind of follow after that was just absolutely amazing to see. And some of the transfers, Jamison Williams was huge. And they were really able to kind of replace things. And look, they came really close to repeating as national champions. And I think most teams in Alabama's situation, losing the players that they did and, the experience that they did last year, I think that most teams probably have multiple losses, and it's a little bit of a rebuilding year. And it probably should have been a rebuilding year for Alabama, but they were able to turn it into an SEC title and really close to a national title.
Yeah, I have to agree with Tony. I think football was the team that overperformed the most. I think, going back to last season, how many times Nick Saban referenced, attitude problems or the poor me's or leadership issues on the team. He was harping on that even into the latter portion of the regular season. And just, I think that last year might have been one of Nick Saban's best coaching jobs. That in 2020 are up there. But, this was obviously still a very talented team. Bryce Young, of course, like Tony said, the first Alabama quarterback to win the Heisman. Will Anderson Jr. also won the Bronco Nagurski Trophy as the nation's, best defensive player. Both of them co-captains as sophomores. So, a lot of young talent on that team. I just really think, this team was it outperformed expectations. They finished 13-2. They do have the national title loss, but they were SEC champions. They drummed Georgia in that SEC title game. And then they were also a pretty, won the Cotton Bowl handily. So how many teams out there, would love to go 13-2 and win the Cotton Bowl in their conference title? Most would, take that in a heartbeat. So, obviously Alabama fans, expect the Crimson Tide to win the national title every year, but, even to have such great success in a non-title winning year, I think says a lot.
Yeah, most fan bases would be happy with that. But if that's where this team is again this year with just a bowl win and not the national title, I think we'll be here a year later saying they underperformed. But I'm going to have to switch it up with you all a little bit. Can't go 3 footballs in a row. I got to give a shout out to the soccer team, especially if you look at where they were at some points in the season, the fact that they were able to go on and get their first NCAA tournament win in program history. It was also the first time all year that they'd won a game away from home, and they were able to do that to advance to the next round. And so they were one of the few teams in the previous athletic season that didn't have, necessarily a great season. They were able to bounce back this past year, not only an NCAA tournament appearance, but also a win, which, like we talked about yesterday with basketball and softball, weren't able to advance out of the first round, and soccer was able to. So those were 2 of the teams that kind of went above, maybe what some of the expectations were. But, like we hit on, those expectations are going to be sky high again for football. But that'll do it for this edition of BamaCentral 3 and Out. Thanks for watching.